We'd like to take a second from this episode of the podcast to celebrate our sponsor of this episode, and that is the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast?
Do you want an inside scoop into what happens on the podcast?
Do you want early access to episodes and loads of cool perks?
Now is the time to become a patron of Hallmarkies podcast.
By becoming a patron, you get to access our patron Facebook group.
You can request episodes or even be a guest on the podcast.
And most importantly, any patron can join our monthly movie watch-alongs with stars like Paul Campbell, Natalie Hall, and more.
It's as low as $2 a month to join in and become a special part of the Hallmarkies family.
Please consider, and we will love you forever.
Go to patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
Yeah, or Ashley. Whether it's with Ashley or or the other people that he's had relationships with. Yeah, that's true. So what do you think of their Ty and Amy's new loft? Pretty fancy.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. I just hope they can't hear the horses and stuff downstairs. But yeah, it's absolutely stunning, and I do like the way this show kind of progresses, like time progresses. Like they don't drag; they have sort of a certain amount of time, and they just sort of keep moving. But it does obviously. I mean, the sort of Jack and Tim stuff of them working on it has been fantastic. But yeah, it looks absolutely stunning.
Yeah, it looks nice. It kind of I have a basement apartment that I rent out, and mine's smaller than theirs, but similar kind of open concept studio apartment. It kind of reminds me of that. I mean, I would think actually it probably is like comforting for Amy to hear the horses.
More than likely. I'm forgetting it's probably comforting to both.
Especially Amy. But yeah, so Tristan's horse, he's a jouster, which evidently is still a career in in the 2000s. But he's a jouster, and his horse Abby keeps getting spooked, keeps neighing, and of course that's when you got to bring in the miracle worker Amy to help solve the problem. And then we also have, so Georgie got her learner's permit, her driving permit. And so she has to go out and drive with a licensed driver. And she's like, oh, me and Jade can go. And I'm like, no. That was funny. And so she goes out with Tim, and he is super overprotective, makes her nervous. I don't know if you remember when you were first driving, but that definitely was the case with me. I mean, I was already very nervous because I've never been a particularly great driver, and
I don't drive.
Oh, you don't drive?
I don't drive. I'm too scared to drive.
Okay.
We have like amazing public transport. I don't need to drive.
Yeah.
It's like I have no sense of direction. I have no confidence, and like. My dad literally, when I was younger, offered to like buy me a car, get me driving lessons, and I was just like, it's going to be a disaster.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well, I wish I didn't have to drive. I live in the suburbs, unfortunately, and so I have to drive. But one thing I just remember with my mom, she would keep braking on her side. I'm like, you're making me nervous. She kept breaking. Also, I remember going out with the driver's instructor, and when I was taking driver's lessons, and I decided to take one day of stick shift. I don't know why I did, and I just remember it was a disaster. It wasn't good, and I remember one of my teachers at church happened to pull up kind of behind us, and he saw that it was me driving, and of course we're like we're going really slow, and then we're bucking, and I don't know, it was bad. And I just remember him and his daughter were there just laughing.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like a European thing or whatever, but like we don't have many like automatic cars. I suppose it's different now that, you know, things are moving into more sort of electric. Every car, like my dad's had so many cars, my uncles or brother, they've had so many cars, and none of them have been automatic.
Really?
I guess it is just like a European thing of like.
Oh, no wonder you haven't learned how to.
Yeah, that's what freaks me out too. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do gears. I don't want to.
Yeah. It was a good thing I did at least get some experience with stick, because a couple of years later I was at a friend's wedding, and they had decided that I was going to be the designated driver. I mean, obviously I don't drink, and but then we got to the end of the evening, and it was a stick shift car that I was supposed to drive, and everybody else was, hammered. So I'm like, what am I gonna do? Oh my gosh. And I mean, now you could just like call everybody an Uber, but but I somehow made it through, and I drove the car. It was a miracle. It was answered prayer. But yeah, poor Georgie at least doesn't have to deal with a stick shift. So that's good. But we also get cute little Katie going to school for the first time, and Tim crying. That was so cute.
Yeah, it was so cute. And then sort of as the episode sort of progressed, it just got better and better of like Tim. Yeah, it was like very reflective of, you sort of felt like Tim sort of, I can't remember how old Amy was when he left, but it feels like it's probably around Katie's age. And he's sort of realizing that he's got a second chance with his grandkids. And yeah, it was just, it's sort of the Tim that I wish we got more of.
Yeah, I prefer sweethearted Tim to,
I mean,
toxic,
I like squabbling,
annoying Tim.
Yeah, I like squabbling Tim with Jack. But
yeah,
the stubborn Tim, I can sort of do without.
Yeah, the stubborn, sort of misogynistic Tim, I could do without as well. But it was very sweet. And then of course Katie comes home and says that she's got a boyfriend. And Katie and Abraham, it's getting real serious real quick.
Yeah.
Was that something you ever did, like when you were little?
Not at all. Not at all. Yeah. Sort of as a way of, them sort of, both of the kids sort of picking up what they're hearing in the house. But I do think they've sort of struck gold again. She's a great little actress. Like,
she's very cute.
Been so lucky with the kids.
Yeah. I was never, even when I was little, I was never really friends with boys. I don't know why. It wasn't by design, but I don't know. All my friends were always girls.
Yeah. I was the same when I was in school. It was the same group of girls. But when I started working, pretty much all of my friends were like over 50 and boys.
That's interesting. Yeah. It's interesting because now that I am in the YouTube space, I have lots of online guy friends. Most of my friends are well, I don't know most, but a lot. I have a lot that I interact with on a regular basis that I'm good friends with. But it's really the first time in my life that I've had guy friends. It's interesting. And I've always wanted to have guy friends. It's just, I don't know. I've just always had, my friends have always been girls. So I think that's interesting. A cute little Katie. But she announced they're getting married, and then they're also getting divorced. So it's been a rough time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then so I liked when Tim and Georgie are driving, and I like just the whole, I'm yelling because you're accused. I'm yelling at you because I'm yelling because you are accusing me of yelling at you. The whole thing was good.
Yeah.
And so Amy and Ty have their first dinner party, and she's making lasagna, but the oven isn't working, so they have to go to the ranch. But what would be your go-to dinner party meal that you would make?
Oh my gosh. You put me on the spot. Oh my gosh.
Lasagna
Really
is
good.
pretty
Yeah.
difficult.
I make really good bolognese. I'm
Mm.
not the biggest fan of it myself, but I do make it really well. Same with like a chili. Can sort of throw something like that together.
Yeah.
I'd probably try to do something like Mexican and sort of, have sort of a sort of layout of people can sort of build their own meal sort of thing.
Yeah.
I like that idea in terms of it takes a little bit of pressure off of me. I just have to put out the ingredients and they can make it themselves.
Yeah, and it's nice if it's something that you can have. I mean, this way lasagna is a good choice. Something you can have completely done, so you're not like, say, making pancakes or something like that, where you have to be at the stove. That's what you want to avoid.
Yeah. For the past few Christmases, I've taken on doing the meal, and I've got it down to like a science. But yeah, that first couple of years of doing it, it's so like you just feel like you spend the entire day in the kitchen. Like you don't enjoy anything of the day just because you're constantly checking on things and there's never enough room in the oven.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah.
really miss entertaining and having people over.
Mhm.
I thought about doing that for my birthday, but people just weren't up for it. So, which I understand. But I I just miss being able to entertain and kind of have a theme and plan everything around it and do like, I don't know, yeah, Mexican theme or Italian theme or, to the food or something like that. I think is so much fun. And I do think pasta is probably one of my go-tos. Is making some kind of pasta dish. I mean, lasagna, it just takes a while to, make all the layers and then, like boiling the meat. And I feel like for a first, I mean, boiling the noodles, I feel like for our first dinner party, it's a pretty hard dish. But Hawaiian haystacks, I don't know if you've ever had those. It's basically just like chicken with those like crunchy noodles on top,
Mm.
and then some like pineapple and a little bit of like a sauce. It's pretty good. Something like that where you kind of make your own, or baked potato bar. That's a really good one.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah. And baked potato bar is nice, especially if you have vegans or people like that
Yeah, for sure.
coming. So she makes lasagna. The oven's not working. And then we have Cass and Caleb. They're fighting. Caleb actually wants a commitment from Cass, which I have to admit, I always struggle when you're dealing with like an older couple. Like, I mean, they're not old by any means, but how old do you think Caleb is?
Mm.
30?
Early to mid, yeah, I would say mid-20s. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So maybe it's not that unreasonable, but it's just like at a certain point you gotta move on with your life, like living, like not wanting to make a commitment. I mean, if it's somebody like Tim, I guess I understand because Tim's got his baggage, but um I I feel like that's a frustrating characteristic in an older character. I have less sympathy than for like, you're 18, 19, of course you're not going to make a commitment. But
Yeah.
she doesn't want to in this case.
And it's believable because she has just sort of finished college and Caleb it's very in character for Caleb because that is sort of what he's always strived for in
Yeah.
sort of a good relationship. But
Well, and he says, I'm not a casual guy. This
yeah.
is not who I am. So that is self-aware, at least. He knows who he is. And, but then Cass tells Ty that she made a big mistake. And so she's regretting it. And then they want to go out again. And as that's actually before she says this to Ty, they see them out at the movies when they said that they didn't want to.
Tired.
Yeah. And then Caleb and Cass are like making out the whole zombie movie.
Gosh.
That would be the worst.
Yeah, it would be awful.
And uh and then she tells Ty that you made a big mistake because they broke up because he wants a commitment. And then you see Caleb in the armor, Caleb and Tristan, and they are jousting. First they miss each other. And then Caleb comes up to after they finish, Caleb falls in the match. And then Cass comes up to him and he says, well, I'm your knight in shining armor. I died. I loved that.
Yeah, it was so good. And like I said, he's very handsome and never looked better.
Yeah. And then Tristan says to Amy, you're the one who made me face my fears, which is very sweet.
Yeah. Tristan was a good sort of guest star this episode.
Yeah.
I like the ones that Amy helps that are on board and are not like, a lot of times it's like, why are you asking Amy for help if you're just going to fight her on everything?
Yeah, it's true. And this was just really, it was just so funny and cute. I thought it worked. And then you have Abraham's mom coming into Maggie's, and she says, oh, we've been going through a divorce. And anyway, her and Lou talk and they connect. And I wish I could have seen Abraham. I'm dying to see him. That would have been, if we get to see him maybe in a future episode, because that's so cute. But yeah, then Tim and Georgie are driving and Tim gives Georgie the horseshoe necklace for good luck.
Yeah, that was sweet.
That was very cute. It was very sweet. So yeah, what would you give this episode 1 to 10?
I'm going to give it a 9, which is a lot for not an episode where nothing dramatic or sort of crazy happened, but I just felt like it was very classic Heartland.
Yeah, I agree. I would also give it a 9. I thought it was very well done.
We'd like to take a second from this episode of the podcast to celebrate our sponsor of this episode, and that is the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast?
Do you want an inside scoop into what happens on the podcast?
Do you want early access to episodes and loads of cool perks?
Now is the time to become a patron of Hallmarkies podcast.
By becoming a patron, you get to access our patron Facebook group.
You can request episodes or even be a guest on the podcast.
And most importantly, any patron can join our monthly movie watch-alongs with stars like Paul Campbell, Natalie Hall, and more.
It's as low as $2 a month to join in and become a special part of the Hallmarkies family.
Please consider, and we will love you forever.
Go to patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
Next, we have Reckless Abandon, and it's Georgie prepares to say goodbye to Bear as he goes off to train with the mounted police. Lou gets a chance at a first date, and Tim might be in for a big life change.
Mm-hmm.
So, what did you think overall of this one?
I liked that. I mean, the bear stuff had me in floods of tears by the end. It got me hook, line, and sinker. I don't know how you feel about this, but I felt like Georgie in these 2 episodes, it was such a dramatic turn for her. I felt like she was being so combative and so reckless when it felt like she had sort of come out of that a little bit. It felt a bit regressive for Georgie. So I struggled a little bit in this episode and the next one with her. I certainly don't. I sort of looked at some of the comments from when this episode aired, and people were very much like angry at Georgie, and I'm like, it's a kid. It's a bit dramatic of a response, but yeah, it did feel a little bit regressive. But I did love the bear part of this episode.
Oh, it was so good. I mean, like her and Lou, ever since the divorce, have been pretty have had their issues. And so I guess maybe it didn't seem as aggressive to me. Um, you know, the whole soul and teenager plot isn't my favorite. So and I do think it is a little hard to believe what will happen in the next episode, the cliffhanger, that she would do that, go that far.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it also made me think. I guess have they completely forgotten Tim's kid, the other kid. What's his name? I forget his name.
Yeah, he's not in it. He's like erased from show canon, I think. Like,
It feels like it.
yeah.
Because that's the kind of behavior he would do, like run away and kind of a thing. But yeah, so it starts out with Georgie and Steven. They go on their ride, Georgie riding Bear, and they go on their date, and it turns out he has to move to Manitoba because his mom got a job there. And that's definitely part of, I think, what makes all this happen with Georgie.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I do sort of want to point out that I do recognise that it can't be easy for her. I mean, I know she loves the ranch and that's sort of her that's sort of all she cares about. But it must not be great for her to like not have any friends other than Stephen. I mean, she sort of has who pops in and out. And she has Olivia who pops in and out. But she doesn't have any other consistent friend other than Stephen.
Yeah, and then Olivia coming back certainly doesn't help things. I almost didn't recognize her. She looked so different to me.
She looks so grown up.
Yeah.
I was like, is that the same person?
Yeah. And she's being difficult as usual. I mean, she is a piece of work.
Yeah.
Olivia.
She's like, worse than Ashley was when we first met her.
Oh yeah, no question. And her stepmom isn't paying any attention to her. She has this horse called the Budget Buster, which is kind of a rude name for a horse, I think. But yeah, it's supposed to be. I mean, the reason it's a Budget Buster, they kind of spent all this money on it's supposed to be this amazing horse. But then Georgie says, that, oh, it's not your horse, it's just you being difficult. But Olivia just puts all of her anger at her stepmother over at Georgie. And she's just, I don't know. She's terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, they've sort of just made it sort of felt like, I can't remember, it was last season she popped in. They had sort of the competition, the jumping competition. But it felt like they sort of tried to have them make peace, and maybe it was sort of a, currently, they were sort of enemies who become friends. But it seems like they keep sort of doing that, of them sort of being horrible, well, Olivia being horrible, and then them sort of making peace, and then she comes back and it's like all over again.
Yeah. I feel like when didn't they work together, or was that her and Jade at the reserve?
I think that was Jade.
It was Jade. Okay. Yeah. So then we have Michael Xavier at Heartland expecting the new loft, and I love him so much. He is just, I think, one of the most handsome people I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, he's absolutely stunning. And I loved Lou's reaction to him. I was just like immediately flustered.
Which you would be, because he's so, although he seems a bit young for Lou
Yeah, he
to
does.
me.
Yeah, he does. He seems more like Amy's age.
Yeah, I agree. And then we also have Casey. She's complaining because her trailer has cold showers, no power. She's thinking about getting her own home. And I mean, that I couldn't live in a trailer like that for very long.
No.
No. And
I
so
went
she's
on a lodge vacation last year with, I think it was, many of us, I think there's 4 or 5, there's 4 of us. And yeah, that was, I mean, I sort of done sort of caravans when I was younger, but that was family. But I was there with friends, and you know, you have your own routines and your own like, and being in such close quarters like with so many other people, it was like fantastic for a week. But you just think about, you know, could you actually live like this? Because there was people that lived on the park, like people that had retired,
sure, yeah.
just lived in these like tiny lodges, and you just think, oh yeah, no, absolutely not.
I need my space.
All my stuff. I need all of my useless stuff.
I know. I mean, I guess that is the appeal, is that it just forces you to
Yeah,
be
get
a
rid of.
minimalist.
Yeah, no, I
But
need
no.
like thousands of books that I haven't read, and
Right. Well, yeah, and it's very loud in those kind of trailers, and I mean, it's fine for a holiday,
Mhm.
but I would not. So I understand that, and plus, it's like an empowering thing to purchase your own home. I think as a single woman.
Yeah, and it makes sense for her if you know, she'd lost her husband. You know, it might not have felt right for her to like live in the home that they were in together, or buy another one without him.
Yeah.
It makes sense that she would take that time.
Yeah, because you want to have a place, even if you spend a lot of time on the road. I think you still want to have a
A
home.
place, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So Tim thinks that this is her angling to move in together, is what he thinks. And so he thinks she's being like passive aggressive, and but she doesn't see it that way.
She's
And I
totally like, yeah, she's totally like chill, and Tim's so frustrating. Like, if we would just have a conversation and
right.
ask, like, it wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, and I mean, I do like Tim and Casey together quite a bit, but he does make a lot of assumptions about people in general, but especially in his relationships.
For sure.
And then so Michael Xavier says, took me a while to take my ring off because Lou still has her wedding ring on.
Yeah.
And then he asks her to coffee. And I feel like that's always a good plan, is to have the pre-date date,
Yeah.
coffee, ice cream.
Yeah.
Some people
With
to go
lots
to
of people.
drinks if that's your thing.
Yeah, lots of people around, and
Yeah, especially if it's like an online thing. You definitely want to, meet up someplace, get a smoothie, something like that. I feel
yeah,
like
for
is a
sure.
good pre-date date. And of course, Lou is kind of nervous about the date. She doesn't say it's a date. And I think that would be the hardest thing. Like, once you are in a relationship, and kind of have been able to put dating aside, and then if it falls apart and then you have to start again, oh, it would be awful. I
Yeah.
feel for all the listeners that had to do that. That would be really hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
agreed.
So then you have the officer coming to check Bear out. And, as I was watching this episode, I was thinking, where is Phoenix? Why is Georgie not spending any time with Phoenix? And then in the next episode, we get to see Phoenix. But yeah, it feels a little bit like, how can she have this relationship with every single horse on the ranch?
Yeah, that's what it sort of frustrated me, of like, this is Amy's business. Like, she takes in rescue horses, and she sort of finds them new homes, or she, you know, passes them on to other people. It's like a turnover, but you have your consistent horses. But Georgie, not only does she have Phoenix, but she has Trouble. So she has 2 trick riding horses, and she wants Bear as well. And it's like, that's why I sort of struggled a little bit in this episode of like, it's not your horse. You have a horse, it's your responsibility, which is Phoenix, and she also took on Trouble. So that's 2 horses that she's got to sort of take care of. But yeah, I understand that she has an emotional sort of connection. She's just a very empathic sort of person, and very, connects with animals really easily. But what Amy says of like, the horse deserves better. Georgie doesn't have the time for 3 horses,
Right.
and this horse is clearly sort of looking for a job, as animals, animals that are sort of that smart and that sort of intelligent and that, sort of energetic tend to do.
Yeah. And yeah, Amy says Bear deserves to be happy in working.
Yeah.
And because a lot of people think, oh, this isn't like nice to the horses, but actually they obviously they can be treated poorly and that should be stopped. But the animals like a horse need to be worked. They need to be busy. They need to be doing. So
yeah, I know for myself, yeah, like I had a border collie, which is a herding dog.
Mm-hmm.
And just because I sort of had him when he was older, I didn't have as much problems. But initially, like, a dog like that wants to work. And I imagine it's sort of a similar thing with horses. They want to be ranch horses. They don't want to sit in a stable or sort of grazing the entire time.
Yeah, so it depends on the animal, I guess. So then Lou goes for coffee, and Michael Xavier, he's like high adrenaline guy.
I can't believe they had a he was so like charming and suave initially and just like full of confidence, and then this scene happened and I'm like, oh no, I can't stand this guy.
He's still talking about surfing and all this
Oh bro.
stuff. And
Yeah, such a bro.
yeah, he really is. But then he asks her to dinner, and she says no, she's not ready. And he says, oh, you're going back to your safe bubble, are you? So but then he denies their inspection of the loft, and she thinks the only reason he did was because of her saying no. And he says, you do the upgrades, you pass, it's no big deal. And
yeah,
I liked when he says, I guess the ego has landed. That's good. Yeah. So I can understand why Lou would think that, but she probably should have asked a few more questions before.
Yeah, and doing it so publicly was so like over the line.
Yeah, and he's like, you calling to question my integrity, and it's I can understand why he's offended by that.
Mm-hmm.
So and then we find out after Tim says, oh, we can move in together, and Casey says, no, I bought this for my own. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to move in with you. And she says, I love the way things are now. Mm-hmm. So it works for her, I guess.
Yeah, and it makes sense. Like I say, it's her first home without her husband, and Tim's hardly, the most committed guy in the world. So you can understand that she's not ready to like buy a house with him.
Yeah,
they've never even lived together. That's what, like, they might be completely incompatible.
Yeah, but I guess there's this relationship in Heartland, or evidently you can be married and not.
Evidently,
you can be married and not live together. Like Lisa and Jack.
and Peter as well.
Oh yeah, that's right. And I kind of wish that they would let go of this Lisa and Lou antagonism. I just don't. I don't know.
Yeah, it's very repetitive. They keep coming back
Yeah.
to it. It's like the only, like, I love Lisa and I love Jack and Lisa's relationship. Like for a lot of the show, that was like my main relationship on the show.
Yeah.
But her being sort of overbearing and pushy has become her one sort of personality trait, and I feel like it's such a disservice to the actress.
Yeah. I agree. And I don't know. It is very repetitive. I think that's the problem. And she I feel like she's almost never deserving of the criticism that she gets. Like she's usually just doing super nice things, like
When people,
making fancy sliders at the thing, or buying a ballet dress for Katie. You know, like she's super nice, and it's not usually appreciated very much.
taking people on vacations.
Right. Yeah, I wish I'd be so cursed to have a friend like Lisa. So Georgie's very upset about Bear leaving, but I think part of the reason why she's upset is because she sees the relationship between Buddy and Bear, because Bear saved Buddy's life. And the whole thing with at the end with Buddy neighing after Bear, and then Georgie riding without riding Bear back so that Buddy can say goodbye. That was so good. That was great.
That got me in the feels, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the music, I don't even know the song, but it was like perfect.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do like this sort of Bear and Buddy sort of storyline of like Buddy's found a place with Jack, Bear's found a place in the police force, and we've had this whole storyline with these two horses.
Yeah. It was so sweet. It was very good. I mean, it makes sense, you know, that these horses are gonna have this bond.
Yeah.
But they just have to say goodbye. It was
Yeah,
so
and
good.
so nice as well.
Yeah. And so then Olivia, they find out that her horse Budget Buster has kissing spines. I think that's what it was. But I guess it's recoverable and they can treat it. And so then Olivia says, I'm just glad my horse is going to be okay. And Olivia invites Georgie to hang out at Maggie's. So there's like some improvement, I guess, on that front. So that was basically everything in the episode. I liked this episode quite a bit. I'd give it an 8. What about you?
I would say an 8. Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, hardy, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies.
The next episode is called A Matter of Trust. And it's Amy and Ty work together to determine why Caleb's horse is becoming ill during his treatment at Heartland. And that there's a lot of other stuff in this episode with that. But sorry.
Such a weird summary.
Yeah. So overall, what did you think of this one?
Yeah, this was a difficult one in terms of like the Georgie thing. It just felt like I could understand the sort of desperation of wanting friends and in sort of, especially the allure of sort of older friends. But yeah, it just felt very extreme. But I do love the sort of, it was a very dramatic episode, and it definitely like kept me hooked. And it worked in that sense.
Yeah, it definitely in the cliffhanger. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looks like this was the mid-season finale, so we're about halfway through.
Mm.
So yeah, it's frustrating sort of having to wait.
Well, and I am not like a rodent person, and those possums were so gross. I was like, ah.
I was a rodent person when I was younger. I had hamsters. I think I had mice, but I definitely had hamsters, and I was like, my dad's initially was just like, you can't have any more. I was distraught every time with it. And then
Did you know that they
my cat,
evidently like sardines?
I did not. I did
You
not.
did know that.
No, no, no.
Okay. You didn't. I didn't know that.
I think Jack's the only person that knows that.
Yeah, evidently. Oh, and just when they're Amy and Ty are hearing like the scratching and it's so gross. I hate that kind of thing. It's awful. And yeah, those possums, evidently they're not indigenous to Alberta, and so they were brought up there as some kind of pet or something, and they're trying to get rid of them, and they're just gross. I'm sorry, all you possum lovers. I just can't.
I'm in the UK, so I've only ever seen them on like TV shows.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they're not a UK thing. So
Oh, okay. Yeah. Not a Canada thing, evidently, as well.
imagine how difficult that would be of like, I suppose someone sort of got them illegally. But yeah, I imagine Ty would get into a lot of trouble if they managed to get out and breed.
Yeah, I mean, huge trouble. And I mean, and then obviously we have this problem with the horses too, that with this, they carry diseases and stuff. That's part of the reason why I don't like rodents. But anyway, so Georgie is trick riding with this teenager named Sam, older girl, and Sam calls Georgie the new kid, and they want to go on this trip. And Jasper, they want to go to Jasper for the weekend. They invite her. I guess what I don't really understand why Georgie didn't just tell Lou, hey, these older girls in the trick team are going to Jasper. They invited me. Here's why I want to go. I mean, as opposed to lying, it just doesn't seem like it's that different from it being going as a trick event versus, oh, here, a bunch of friends. And I mean, I guess unless she knew for sure that there was going to be problems, that it was going to have drinking or something like that, then of course you're going to lie. But she wouldn't have had to tell that to Lou, just said it's a bunch of friends. I don't know. I feel like she made it more complicated than she needed to. And then involving Peter and trying to get his permission was very underhanded to do.
Yeah, it felt like it was a situation where I don't think that in any world Lou would have said yes to this. Like, no matter how she pitched it, I just don't think Lou would be okay with it, especially because she's so focused on them being like bonded and a little family and going on like the Dominican Republic she was wanting to take them to. So she's so focused on them as a family right now that she would have said no. I also think she just wouldn't want her sort of away with older kids. But yeah, I just think, I just don't think there's any way that she could have pitched it. And then every time she made a decision, it was like, people have phones and like Lou can just call the coach, which is exactly what she did. Don't think it was very well thought out on Georgie's part of like, yeah, she's not great at being deceptive.
Yeah, I mean, I think that your best shot probably would have been to have Lou talk to Sam and for Sam to be like, we're not going to drink, we're not going to, whatever, like to give a little spiel, but maybe she's not close enough to Sam to do that. I mean, I can understand why Georgie wants to go on the trip, wants to be included because she's the youngest member of the trick team. And but yeah, her saying that it's an extreme trick trip was stupid, because of course Lou is going to call, and she says, what kind of mother would be if I didn't call? And Georgie says, well, one who trusted me. And yeah,
it's like, you lied. And I also
Right.
I don't think Sam's that invested in if Georgie goes or doesn't go. I think she just extended an invitation and wanted an answer of, like, do we have to pick you up or not? I don't think, like, even if Georgie sort of went to Sam and said, listen, my mum's going to call, and I don't think even she would want to be involved in that. It doesn't seem like that, we've never seen her before, at least to my memory. So yeah.
Yeah, and then her calling Peter was just
that was bad.
It was bad.
Yeah,
it was bad. And but did you think it was funny when Ty thinks that the dog ate the possums?
Yeah, that whenever that. Yeah, I love when Remy shows up. That's Remy's actually Amber Marshall's real dog.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's her real dog. So you see him. Yeah, so you sort of see him pop up on her Instagram a lot. So I love when you see him sort of a little bit younger on this show.
Yeah, that was funny. I like that. And then Jack hears the possums named Stinky and Minky, and they are, I can't. But he captures the possums with the sardines, so who knew? And then the Caleb's horse Rusty, he brings him over there, and that was a beautiful horse with the spots. I love
stunning.
That. It was gorgeous.
Yeah.
And
reminded me of Ghost.
Oh yeah, that's true. And so then they think that the horse has EPM, which is a neurological disease transmitted by possums through the hay. And but then they think it's actually something called carbofurin, which is carried by pesticides and contaminated water. And so it turns out Amy had taken him out drinking, and there's dirty trash in the water. Yeah. And then of course Lou calls, and she says, I'm surprised at you and disappointed. The older girls are going on a joyride, and she tells Peter Georgie's becoming expert at working us. Yeah. And you're right. Like, why did she says, oh, somebody who trusts me, but she was literally lying. Why would she? Oh man, stuff like this just makes me glad that I don't have children. Oh my gosh. But then so Trudy cancels the Jasper trip, and of course that makes Sam mad at Georgie, and then Georgie is upset, and Lou and her have this big fight. That I also thought it was kind of out of character that she was kind of mean to Katie.
Yeah.
Not walking with her to the bus and stuff.
Yeah, she was just like chasing her all over the place. Yeah, it feels like when Georgie, that's sort of the frustrating thing about these episodes, is it felt like she'd come so far, but in this episode it felt like if she doesn't get her way, it's like everything suffers, like a relationship with her mom, a relationship with Katie, a relationship with Phoenix, like just because she didn't get her way.
Yeah, and she's never been rude to Katie in my memory, at least, so that was kind of surprising. I don't picture her doing that. And then, I mean, I'm surprised she didn't talk to Jack, because they always had such a good relationship. he kind of yells at her about riding Phoenix. But because Phoenix is upset, Georgie's too busy. And so then Jack takes Phoenix out and ends up taking a drink from the dirty water. So we see at the end, Phoenix is sick with the same thing that Rusty had. And Georgie didn't show up for school. Jade, Adam didn't see her. And Georgie has run away. They try to call Jeff and Peter, of course, and she didn't bring her phone with her. And so we see her somewhere in the city on a bus, coming out of a bus at the end. So it was the big cliffhanger that she would do this. I mean, we do have to remember that Georgie, has abandonment issues, and definitely still has some PTSD kind of thing from her upbringing, but still, it was kind of a shocking cliffhanger.
Yeah, and I guess the reason I was so hard on, my response to this was, it's not really that she's been abandoned by her family. It's almost the opposite of them all sort of wanting the best for her. But yeah, again, I think it just comes down to the fact that she just doesn't have anyone outside of her family. She's sort of made Heartland and the trick riding her sort of existence, and she takes on so much in terms of just working with the animals and things that she doesn't have, very much like Amy doesn't have friends. Like Amy doesn't have friends, which I think,
yeah, that's true. They have that conversation.
Yeah,
that that I was never one to have a lot of friends, just one or just my best friend. And she's talking about Soraya there, right?
Yeah, we haven't seen her in seasons.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens next. We seem to always get these cliffhangers as the third episode.
Perfectly.
When we do these. So next week we will see what happens to poor Georgie. Hopefully they will find her quick. But there we go. Let us know if you're listening what you think of these 3 episodes. What would you give this one to 10?
I'll give it an 8.
Yeah. I mean, maybe I would give it a 7.5, just a little bit lower than the other one, but yeah, it was pretty good. It was a very strong grouping. So let us know what you think of these 3 episodes. We would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section or on Twitter. And Michelle, where can people find you?
On Twitter at Michelle R. Benson.
Great. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. And make sure you're following us at Hallmarkies Podcast and Hallmarkies Pod, all of our social media. And if you are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. It helps us so much. And if you are listening on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that so much. We also have our Patreon group and merch store, which has some Heartland inspired merch. So check that out. And thanks so much. We'll talk to y'all later. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.